Hey guys, welcome back to the Bayside Fabrication YouTube channel. Well, we have a lot of buttoning up to do on the engine side of things, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. Well guys, I got a big surprise. This box just came in here. What is in this box, huh? Ooh, baby. So this is the cylinder support system, a fresh block I just received back. It has the trown pistons, mainly rods, O-ring bored 1/2 millimeter over, race bearings cleaned. Obviously it's got the cylinder support deck in here. 900 horsepower setup. I needed to do something on my power steering reservoir, which I am just kind of putting together right now. We're just doing a little tank, and it's actually, I'm gonna say it's just about a quart, because a quart of oil fits right in here, no problem. It's just a little 2-inch wide tank, but that's gonna sit somewhere like that with the fill screw like right here. And then all of our fuel stuff can go here. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Well guys, here's my tank for my power steering reservoir. It's just tacked up, we're gonna weld it together. It's just gonna sit right in there. Pretty simple little setup. Here it is, our power steering reservoir tank. I just have to add 2 more fittings, but I'm not sure the exact size lines that are going to be running into it yet until I get a couple more fittings, and I'm waiting on a ton of stuff. So that's kind of the name of the game right now, is the waiting game. All right, so how we have it mounted here is just this screw here, and we have it through bolted on the back side through the taillight. Now, this was our second rendition of the fuel pressure regulator. We're actually gonna mount it over there, but it wound up not being ultimately the best spot for it. So that's another thing when it comes to like doing this stuff, is sometimes you gotta go through 3 or 4 stages of where stuff's gonna live and where stuff just doesn't work out. In a perfect world, you'd get it all right the first time, but in things like this, sometimes you just have to move around, see where things really want to live, and it's just kind of the way it goes. So in this situation, like I said, we had our fuel pressure regulator originally here, then over here, and now it's back over here, but this winds up being a much better spot for our power steering reservoir. How cool is this? So I have everything just mocked up here, and what I'm going to do now is get our oil drain line installed, our oil feed line. We have to get our wiring harness installed. We have to get our coil packs mounted somehow. We have to just do a lot of little things. We got to put all of our gaskets on. We got to put our fuel injectors in. We ultimately have to get the flywheel bolted on, the clutch back on. Essentially, it's reassemble the whole motor. So this is the $400 junkyard motor. I don't even know if it runs. It should. It has compression and it turns over. So, and all the pistons are intact. So I think it's good. And essentially this is gonna be our guinea pig motor. So if we have any problems with any of the system, oil pressure, anything like that, it's all gonna go through this motor and not our expensive built motor that we just got. All right, so first issue we're running into here is we are getting the oil line drain. So the oil line drain is just gonna go straight into the top of the pan here at its highest point that we can get. That will be the oil drain for the turbo. And then our feed line here, I had a fitting, but it's going to contact the turbo. So we're gonna have to pull this fitting off and get a 45 on it right off the get-go here. A lot of little stuff like this that's gonna be time consuming and annoying. We also have to install oil feed line, which we're gonna tee off the pressure sensor there. I do wanna consider a filter relocation kit as well. Not really necessary on this motor, but it's probably something that I'm gonna do, I'm thinking. And like I said, we're just gonna go around and try to get everything sorted out. We have to add a brake booster reference on the back. We have to get the wiring harness kind of on here a little bit to see where our map sensor is gonna have to be welded to. We're gonna get all of our coolant lines and fittings all sorted out and squared away. So like I said, just a lot of little things to button up on this while we have it out of the car. So I'm gonna do my best to do that. We also have to weld on some AN fittings for the power steering pump, get our fuel injectors installed. Like I said, just a lot of little things. So I'll show you all the minor things as we go, but pretty sick having everything built on the engine mount. That way this whole unit just comes out with 4 bolts, 2 transaxle bolts, and these 2 motor mounts here. Whole transaxle and engine comes right out of the car. It's pretty cool actually, how easy it all goes. Okay guys, let me show you an issue I'm running into with my turbo drain. I actually kind of had this similar problem on my cart here. And the issue is that our AN fittings are too big and I can't make a proper line that just goes into here without using a barb. Now I was trying to avoid using barbs. I could go like this way because you want to enter into the top of the pan. So I could do something like that, but that kind of gets long. I mean, you really want the shortest shot here. So I'm almost thinking about maybe just buying a T4 barbed fitting here for the turbo. And then just doing something like that. I think that's gonna kind of have to be it. It'll just be a straight shot right down to the pan here. All right, guys, check it out. This is gonna be our guinea pig motor here to make sure everything works. Now I just popped the oil pan off, and this is the factory steel oil pan that I was going to use. However, at the junkyard today, a K24 Z3 aluminum oil pan showed up, and weight-wise, they feel about identical, but this looks like it actually has a little more capacity in the pan. So I'm gonna see if it bolts up. The only difference I noticed right offhand is this has the little cutout here for the Z3 oil filter, and this obviously doesn't. So I'm gonna pop it on and see if all the bolt holes line up and where that cutout is has any kind of, if there's any issue with this or if it hits the mating surface. And maybe this is an option so I can run a little more oil capacity on a aluminum oil pan. And once this is all cleaned up and everything, it'll just look way better. So yeah, I'm just gonna see how that works. Also, you notice the Z3 oil pan has where it mounts to the transmission, and this doesn't. This is a separate piece that mounts to the transmission to the engine block, and this is all one piece here. So I'm gonna see if all the holes line up to our adapter plate and everything. It just might be more of a seamless setup than having a multi-piece deal here. Really doesn't make much difference, but like I said, this looks like it could hold more capacity. So I'm gonna do a couple things real quick. I'm just gonna measure, I'm gonna put a straight edge here, measure to the very bottom of each pan to see if there's any height difference to where the pickup is. And yeah, we'll see if this is something we can use. It was $28, so I figure we'll give it a shot, and if it doesn't work, it's whatever. All right guys, so I just did a quick test here. So I filled this pan up completely with water. I spilt a tiny little bit of it moving it over here, but they're exactly the same capacity. I was thinking this would be a little bit more just because I read it somewhere on the internet, but it is not at all. So there's really no difference between the steel or the aluminum in any way, shape, or form, except from what I'm seeing, this little knockout here. And from what I measured, it's 1/8 inch deeper here. So it might have a little more capacity, but it's not gonna be enough to make any kind of difference at all. So that's good to know. Just because I bought it, I'm gonna go with the aluminum pan anyway. It's just because it looks better, it looks cleaner. Once I get all the oil and crap off it, it's just gonna be a nicer setup and it will look better in the car. I'll likely get it powder coated with the rest of the aluminum parts, so it'll just be a nice clean setup there. And I do like the fact that it's all one piece and will bolt to my adapter ring here. All right guys, check this out. Now that we're mounting the oil pan here, our aluminum oil pan, we're dealing with the drain. Now, the center section here on a turbo can't be any more than 15 degrees rotated this way or this way. So the problem I'm running into is, you can see my drain wants to come straight down here, and this is at a 45 here. So I don't have enough room to really run 2 fittings here, so I had to do a barb, but even the barb coming out as a 90 kind of doesn't work because it will want to kink the hose. So effectively, I'm gonna have to cut off the turbo drain here and weld just a little 45/90 tube on it and then barb it like that. So at the end of the day, the turbo drain will look just like that. Not ideal. I don't like that many kinks, you know, in the drain, because ultimately it turns into a 90, but it is what it is. And honestly, in hindsight, if I would have mounted this whole turbo setup like 2 inches higher, it wouldn't have affected anything, and I would have had plenty more clearance with that. So that's one of those things that could have been avoided, and honestly, I just wasn't really, like, visually, it looked like I had plenty of clearance, you know, at the time. But then once you add the drain and the fitting and all this stuff, it adds up to a lot more length. You know, like I said, I would have just liked to use a couple AN fittings, but now I have to use hose clamps and stuff, and it just kind of sucks. It's gonna be totally fine, but it's, like I said, it's just one of those annoying things, and when you're a perfectionist, it just drives you crazy a little bit. All right, here's a little something I'm working on right now, is just getting my power steering lines sorted out. Now, let me show you what the stock power steering line end is. So if you can imagine, this is the actual fitting that went to the pump on the motor. And this connected to this. Thankfully, this was an aluminum tube, and I was able to weld a aluminum fitting to it, and we're gonna use AN fittings. But let me just show you the problem I was running into. I bought these adapters, but they were ORB adapters, but they weren't quite right. So what happens is, there's this, essentially this flare here. Then this is like a ORB, O-ring bushing style fitting, which goes onto that. And then it has this weird little metal collet that clicks in to it like that. And then the other side, this is not it, but you can imagine, is a receiver on this end, and essentially all it does is make a contact with this flare fitting. So this is brass. I couldn't do much with this. I wound up crushing and oblonging the high pressure side a little bit, so the hose is actually compromised. So what I wound up doing is just welding on AN fittings and calling it a day. It was just a super weird fitting that Porsche has that I don't even know what it is, and really didn't take the time to investigate, because once I found out this tube was aluminum, this tube is also relatively thick aluminum as well, so it's super easy just to weld an AN fitting to the end of it and call it a day. Now the other end of it is here, so you can see it's the same style fitting, and that just connects midway in the car to more hard line. So that's my solution for that, and then we're just gonna run AN fitting and AN lines, PTFE lines, to the power steering pump, and that should be totally fine. So that's what we're doing with the power steering line. Showing you quick clips on everything we're doing here. We got our turbo drain welded at a little bit of an angle here to match. And then we had our pan glass bead blasted, so this thing's like brand new. And we welded in our turbo drain on the pan. So that's gonna go back on. So that's what we're doing for the motor side as of tonight. We also have one of our fittings welded to the power steering pump. So we have a dash 10 going to the inlet, and then the high pressure out is going to be a 6 AN, and we're just waiting for that fitting to come in. And right now, we're going to add some sound deadening. So what I did was I took the liberty just to do a little satin black rattle can on the inside of the engine bay, so everything's looking fresh. And I got this, geez, I think it was crepes. I can't remember how thick it was. So we got this sound deadening off Amazon, and what we're gonna do is just kind of go over the whole engine bay, not the whole engine bay, but most of it, at least the cabin side up and under, to just seal that off with some sound deadening and have a nice layer of that, because we did remove a bunch. Like I said, this is gonna be a street car, guys, so I want this thing to actually be relatively comfortable to drive. I want it to be relatively quiet. I don't want to have crazy vibrations, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of want it to be more or less stock feeling-ish, if that makes any sense. So when we're not lead footing it and, you know, being Johnny Hot Rod with it, I want it to just be like a reasonable car you can drive around town. So that's kind of the goal. And with that being said, we're going to just kind of go over all the areas here where we stripped off the factory sound deadening, and just go back over and just make it nice and tidy and clean that up with some sound deadening material there. All right, guys, thanks for watching. That does it for this one. Now, I know it feels like it's a little bit choppy, the video, because it kind of is. So what I've been doing is working just nights on this car. I've been super busy with you know, orders and customers and things like that. So I'm just trying to show you as much as I possibly can. And at this stage of the game, it's a lot of little things which just take a ton of time, and a lot of them are stupid, but they have to be addressed. And I just want to show you guys how involved this is in case you decide you want to take on a swap like this. It's not just throwing a motor in, it's all the small things that really add up, especially in the end here. So I appreciate y'all watching, and I'm super pumped because, I mean, this thing is getting really close to actually being a running car in the near future here. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.